Welcome to Musings on Mysteries and the Mythical Matrix. Ladies and gentlemen, mystery seekers, musers, conspiracy theorists, interdimensional philosophers, seekers of truth, and last, but certainly not least, all of you that desperately cling to your confirmation bias, we're thrilled that you've decided to muse with us. Whether your interest is Atlantis, Zeus, or anything in between, we tackle it all from the quantumly entangled secret castle tucked away in the ancient, flood-battered, central Pangaean mountain range. We're a podcast dedicated to exploring the fringe with logic, unraveling the interdimensional and mythical matrix, and where we also theorize the fourth dimension exists and is the spiritual. Yelling trigger warning for this episode is a logical conversation, so if applying the Socratic method on fringe topics is disturbing to you, turn off the podcast now. You have been warned. So I need to address the elephant in the room here, ladies and gentlemen, mystery seekers, musers, as to why my co-host Trace has not been on the show the last several episodes. As you've probably noticed, he went virtual for the last several episodes he was on and then stopped coming on. His schedule got really busy, so we've been talking for a while about replacing him as a co-host, and we don't quite have a full plan for that yet, but he wants to focus on pursuing things that don't quite align with the podcast direction, such as his schooling, and so he's kind of decided to branch off and to do that. And so in the meantime, I am joined by my beautiful wife here instead. Her name's Madison.
Hello.
So Madison's filling in, and you'll probably be seeing some more of Isaiah filling in as well until we get a more consistent co-host figured out.
Well, and I'll be joining for a couple of other ones too.
Yes, you will. So today's episode is going to be about neuroscience. I hope you're prepared.
We're talking about Satan.
I had to put you on the spot to see what you would do.
I'm already anxious about this. I came wildly unprepared for this episode, so
I did all the prep work. You're good.
Yeah.
So yes, no, we're not talking about neuroscience. So
my stomach leapt into my chest.
No, so I guess we should fill people in what you're studying.
Yeah, so I'm currently working on my master's in clinical mental health. So yeah, I'm a big psych nerd.
I'm also a psych nerd. That was my undergrad, but you decided to go for your master's before me. Mm-hmm. So I kicked it over to you since we had that conversation with Isaiah last week talking about consciousness in AI and computers. I figured it'd be good to actually ask the question of how neuroscience works, how people think, stuff like that. So that's something that you'll be addressing for us in a future episode some months from now. I saw you get nervous again. No, we're not going to.
Yes,
we're not
I feel like you're still
no.
messing with me.
No, I'm not messing with you.
No, but we're going to cover that, and I think we're also going to do dreams too at some point.
Yeah, so I have 3 episodes I want to do with you, which is a neuroscience one, a dreams one, and a drugs one. So
that'll be fun.
Yeah, so
Wait, no, drugs are not fun.
Don't do drugs. Stay in school.
Covering the topic will be fun.
Yes.
I'm such an awful influence.
You're fine.
Okay, good.
But yeah, so you have an interesting, so instead of a fish fact, since Trace is no longer with us, you have a interesting psychology fact for us, I think, yes?
Yeah, I think I have 2 because you want me to say the one because you think it's funny and it fits.
Okay, go ahead.
So the one that I came up with was more like social psychology. But if you're talking to somebody and if you look at their feet, if they're pointed towards you, they actually want to talk with you. Like if they're not pointed to you, that means they don't really want to talk to you.
Yeah. The feet are kind of the forgotten area of body language a lot of times, is that your feet are true tells that most people don't try to adjust for or correct or anything. They'll just kind of, the feet are more honest. Yes.
Yeah.
So no, that's definitely a good body language fact. I like that one. And then what was the second one you had?
So the one's about confirmation bias. But people tend to search and interpret information in a way that confirms their pre-existing beliefs.
I knew it. I knew people had confirmation bias.
It's a real thing. It's not a myth.
Wait. I've just engaged in the metaphysical action of seeking confirmation bias about confirmation bias.
That is so ironic. But that means that they, like, some people go to such extremes with confirmation bias that they, like, disregard, like, contradictory evidence. But I thought that was kind of funny.
That's a good point, because I always say that in the intro. I think I've said that since the first episode, and we've never defined it on the show. Mm-hmm. So it's definitely something important to understand. And it's important to be aware of, too, is that you'll seek out things that confirm your beliefs, and to be aware of that in an effort to seek out your objectivity in life. Because I think it's important to be objective in certain things. And that comes more naturally to some people versus others. And that ultimately is a personality thing, which I do want to do a Myers-Briggs episode at some point as well, because that ties into consciousness. So maybe we'll do that within your series that you're going to do for us.
That would be so good for you. Like, you love Myers-Briggs.
Oh yeah, I don't even need to prep for that. I've studied that stuff
you
like
just know.
So well. Yeah, so for our listeners, Maddie and I met on an online dating platform.
Oh my gosh, I'm going to tell them the story.
Yeah, I got her Myers-Briggs correctly off of a guess based off of her 3 profile pictures and short bio. I was like, "Are you an ISFP?" And you're like, "What the heck?"
you like hardcore creeped me out when you did that.
Yeah, somehow we still ended up together, so I guess it didn't creep you out that bad.
No.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is what it is. So today we're going to be talking about Satan.
Wow. Okay,
nice gear shift. We're going to be talking about Satan in the Bible specifically, because I think it's important to. I was kind of realizing this as I was actually preparing for this episode, but that there's a lot of beliefs about Satan. Some are biblical, some are not. And the Bible, like, where we get a lot of our beliefs about Satan comes from very, like, different passages in the Bible. Like, it's not as clear cut and white, like black and white, as I expected it to be. It was definitely a little bit more, I don't want to say fringe, but it's definitely more an interesting collection and interpretation of certain scriptures. So I'm gonna do a systematic approach here. So I'm gonna break down first verses in the Bible, some key highlights that very clearly delineate Satan. And then I'm going to go back at the end, and I'm going to hit a couple other interesting connections here. And then, of course, we'll take a couple brief pauses to give the discussion a rest and kind of reorient ourselves.
Collaborate.
Yes. So the first one I'm going to do is I'm going to hit on Job, because Job is often thought to actually be the oldest book in the Bible by many scholars. And we're going to look at Job 1, 6 through 12. For all of these, I'm going to be using Bible Gateway as a resource. I'm going to be using American Standard Version, because the American Standard Version was published in 1901, so I don't have to worry about any limitations of copyright use with this specific version. King James would also be good, but I do not feel like reading the King James for an hour. I would, no, not going to do that.
You don't like King James?
It's too awkward to read.
Oh, the wording of it.
Yeah. And I know there's a lot of strong opinions out there. I know Harry's probably listening right now and mad because I don't like reading the King James. And if Harrison Smith's listening, I know he's a big fan of the King James, and he's going to yell at me in the next episode he's a guest for. So anyway, yeah, everyone will be mad at me for that, but it's okay. I'm used to it. So Job 1, 6 through 12. Now it came to pass on the day when the sons of God came to present themselves before Jehovah, that Satan also came among them. And Jehovah said unto Satan, Whence comest thou? Oh, this reads like King James too. Then Satan answered Jehovah and said, From going to and fro on the earth, and from walking up and down in it. And Jehovah said to Satan, Have you considered my servant Job? For there is none like him in the earth, a perfect and upright man, one that fears God and turns away from evil. Then Satan answered Jehovah and said, Does Job fear God for nothing? have you not made a hedge around him and around his house and around everything he has on every side? You've blessed the work of his hands, and his substance is increased in the land. But put forth thy hand now and touch all that he has, and he will renounce you and turn away from you. And Jehovah said unto Satan, Behold, all that he has is in your power, alling upon his own life, do not put forth your hand. So Satan went forth from the presence of Jehovah. I kind of saved it there at the end. I don't know if you noticed, but I was kind of translating that from Old English speech to something a little bit more pleasant on the fly.
Yeah.
So I apologize if that was a little rough there, but I'll try to do that for the rest of this. So the premise here is that the sons of God are coming and presenting themselves to God. The sons of God is a term that we've seen before on this show, where it's used in Genesis 6 when it says the sons of God came down unto the daughters of men, took wives from whomever they chose, and that's where the Nephilim ultimately come from. And so we can kind of use this passage here in this usage, because it is the same usage, same word for sons of God. We can use this to kind of confirm, because we know this is talking about angelic beings, we can use this to confirm that Genesis 6 is telling us angelic beings fell from heaven and intermingled with humanity. So it's an extra cross-reference there, which that's how this is a very simplified version of how interlinear Bible study works. But yeah.
Just the cross references.
Right. So this is understood to be Satan in the Hebrew. The word we translated as Satan, I have to look at the actual Hebrew. I think it's Satan or pretty close to that. But this word means accuser or adversary many times. And so that's something you'll see commonly used in a lot of Christian circles, where it's accuser or adversary. Then we jump to Job chapter 2, verses 1 through 7. And I'm actually not going to read all of this, but basically, Satan goes before God again, and he's like, hey, I did all this stuff to Job. I didn't touch his body, bring any harm to him physically. He still hasn't renounced you, but if you put him in physical pain, then he's going to renounce you. And God's like, okay, go ahead and test him then, see what happens. And so Satan gets permission to not kill Job, but to bring sores and boils and all sorts of other skin conditions on Job's body. And Job ultimately, the book of Job's a very interesting read, because it's basically Satan tests Job, and Job goes through all this horrible calamities back to back to back, worst luck ever you can imagine. He has all of his kids die, 14 kids all die. He loses all of his possessions and wealth. He loses his health, and ultimately, his wife and 3 of his friends come to him and tell him to just curse God and that he's done some sin or something. And Job cries out to God for an answer, and God ultimately shows up, and it's very interesting dialogue. But I digress from the main point here. We see Satan bringing these curses and these inflictions upon Job, but only with God's permission, which is an interesting thing. Is that Satan, the accuser, needs permission to be able to persecute believers.
You would think that he would just do it.
Yeah, but it's just God's just that much more powerful from that Christian perspective, which is an interesting take.
Right.
We see that, and this one will be a little bit more study focused, so I'll apologize for our listeners if this one isn't as engaging. I'll try to keep it as light as I can. First Chronicles, we see Satan is referenced again, 1 Chronicles 21, and Satan stood up against Israel and moved David to take a census of the people in Israel. So that was something God had forbidden, and the accuser comes along and prods David to do this, which it's an interesting thing that they go out of their way to say that Satan encouraged David to do this. I don't know if there's anything there or not, but there's a couple other small references throughout the Old Testament, but those are kind of the main highlights. New Testament, if we talk about Satan, the first thing that immediately comes to mind is Jesus' temptation in the wilderness, for those that are familiar with Christianity and biblical circles. So now we're dealing with Greek, not Hebrew, different language. We see temptation type behavior from Satan in tempting Jesus in the wilderness, similar to how the serpent was tempting Eve to eat the apple.
Right.
But this time, Jesus resists it and doesn't give in to the temptation. The word for Satan here is diablo in the Greek. It means slanderer or false accuser. So very similar meaning to what we see in Hebrew, of accuser or adversary.
Mm.
Then let's take a short break. We're about at 15 minutes here. And then we'll come back with some more insights. The interesting stuff will probably be more towards the end. I'm just going to kind of get through the more basic, the more basic scriptures to build that outline, and then we're going to hit some other interesting, more poetic passages that have been interpreted to reference Satan. So stick around. And we're back, ladies and gentlemen, mystery seekers, musers, those of you that desperately cling to your confirmation bias. We are surprised yet thrilled you have returned to join us as we muse here once again. So I am surprised if you're still here with confirmation bias, because you already know what you're looking for and you found what you're looking for. So there's no need to seek any further. Anyway, I don't know. I'll get off my high horse about those with confirmation bias, and you stop picking on them so much.
If you keep picking on them, they're just going to stay in their confirmation bias. They're not going to be encouraged to go out there and learn about different things.
It's true. Logical fallacy users, that's probably more my pet peeve than those with confirmation bias. So, so I'm going to hit a couple other verses here. I'm going to try to go a little quicker through these. And then we'll hit a few other things, and then we'll kick it over to you for some of your thoughts, because you had something you were wanting to bring to the table, and then we'll...
Just very minimal thoughts.
Yeah, it's all right. I mean, I already did a lot of prep for this episode months ago, so no worries. So in Luke 10:18, Jesus talks about how we see Satan falls from heaven. The word here is different than diablo, accuser. It's not the same word. It's satanan. The word here might have a connotation of meaning like a demon or a high up demon versus like the devil himself, like the accuser himself. Mm. This might be two different entities being referenced here, possibly. It gets a little hazy to tell. When the Bible says that Satan enters Judas, it's the word satanan that's used.
What language is that again?
This is Greek.
That's Greek?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and the word for demon that's used in the Gospels is daimonon. I don't speak Greek. I can read Hebrew on the show, no problem, but when it comes to Greek, I struggle. Daimonion. That's, yeah.
Daimonion?
Yeah, okay. I just need to have you on the show from now on to read all Greek stuff.
I'm not even looking at the word. I just guessed.
Yeah. So, it's interesting, though, because, there's this one pickup line, right, that talks about how, like, did it hurt when you fell from heaven because you were inferring you're an angel? In actuality, if you look at the context of scripture, if someone uses that pickup line on a girl, they're like calling the girl Satan, basically.
It's kind of funny.
Yeah, it's really funny. So if you, to any of our female musers out there, any of our ladies, if you ever get hit on by a guy and he says, did it hurt when you fell from heaven, and you really just want to like reject him hardcore and destroy his confidence, you can just be like, oh, so I'm Satan then, huh? Anyway.
I just thought of something so funny as a comeback to that.
Oh, boy.
Just say no, but it's going to hurt when you go to hell.
Oh, my gosh. Jeez. Oh my gosh. Just So one other one I wanted to hit on from the New Testament, well, there's a couple more, but one other key one I wanted to hit before we get to the end of the New Testament is that Paul talks about Corinthians that even Satan can disguise himself as an angel of light. And that's the word, I believe that's Satanan here as well, which is interesting because then that's telling us that these sons of God have the ability to disguise their appearance as something that they're not, kind of like their pre-fallen state, to make themselves appear as something good and desirable and friendly. That's interesting. I mean,
What verse is this again and everything?
this is 2 Corinthians 11:14 that specifically references
Oh, literally what I just read to you. Like, okay.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry.
That's what I read to you.
Oh, all right. Well, I'm glad we're on the same wavelength here.
We're so in sync.
Yeah. Let's see here. So I'm going to hit Revelation. I'm going to finish up in the New Testament here, and then we can circle back and hit some other points. So Revelation is kind of where a lot of this got interesting, because I was studying this and approaching this with an open mind, and I kind of realized that there was actually no verses that indicated that Satan or the accuser was actually a serpent at all. Because you see it referenced in Genesis, but you don't see any correlation to a serpent or Satanan or the accuser, Diablos. You don't see a correlation of that to a serpent until you get to Revelation, which I thought was interesting. So Revelation is actually kind of where it comes full circle. What it talks about, Revelation 2 talks about where Satan's throne is, about having an actual throne. But then Revelation 12, I'm just going to read verses 3 and 4 and then verse 9. Because I think it's self-explanatory. And there was seen another sign in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his head 7 diadems. I don't know what diadems are. And his tail drew a third of the stars of heaven and cast them to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman that is about to deliver a child, that when she delivered, he may devour her offspring. And then verse 9, and the great dragon was cast down, the old serpent, he that is called the devil and Satan, the deceiver of the whole world. He was cast down to the earth, and his angels were cast down with him. So I guess I should review my notes a little bit better, because there it says devil and Satan together distinctly in Revelations 12:9. But this is kind of where it comes full circle, where it tells us, it talks about the stars of heaven. I think that's generally understood to be referring to angels, that Satan took a third of the angels with him when he fell from heaven and he rebelled. And then you have him also referenced as a dragon that was cast down, the old serpent, that's called devil and Satan. And that's where it really gets spelled out, if you will, that Satan and the devil are picking you up, typing on the mic.
Oh.
Yeah, that's fine. Totally derailed me. Sorry.
That the devil and Satan are. I'm trying to research stuff because you said that you don't know what diadems are, so I'm trying to figure it out.
It's probably like horns. No, it's not horns, because it says horns before that.
I looked up diadems, and it's all it says is about like this one website says God's micro world. It's like microorganism type stuff. But I don't know if that's what that means in that context, because it's, yeah, I doubt it. But,
I don't know.
Yeah.
We'll have to dig into that a little bit more on the next break. But so this is another interesting aspect here I wanted to touch on, since we're hitting this verse. It talks about how, something really weird to depict, having 7 heads and 10 horns. And sometimes this is understood to be metaphorical, but you see a lot of descriptions of entities like this throughout the Bible.
Like the seraphim and
like
thrones
that stuff that doesn't quite make sense. And that's where the 4th dimensional theory kind of comes from with my perspective on this. Because you have things that don't make sense to us in a 3rd dimension. Like a dragon with 7 heads and 10 horns seems kind of weird. But then if you think about it as something from the 4th dimension that's just appearing this particular way as one of its many manifestations in the 3rd dimension, but it's 4th dimensional, suddenly it starts to make a little bit more sense. And that's kind of where a lot of this theory of the show comes from, the whole M-Quad theory, if you will. But
yeah.
You got excited about angels. Did you have something that you were wanting to talk about specifically in regards to that?
Well, it just reminds me of the Seraphim because that's the one with the 6 wings, 2 of them for flying, 2 of them to cover the feet, and then 2 to or I think that's it. Something like that. And then there's
sounds right.
eyes all over the wings, like all over the bodies. So yeah, I mean, you see that in a lot of different, I guess, things. I don't know what the...
In Bible verses
yeah.
in descriptions of these beings, right?
The beings, that's what I was looking for. But you see it not just with Satan, but like with all the different types of angels, and so.
Right. So now I want to circle back a little bit. I'm going to go back to Isaiah, not our guest, but the book of the Bible. Because this one has some interesting insight. So I'm going to read Isaiah 14:12 through 20. Oh man, I need to correct for this King James speak. How are you fallen from heaven, O day star, son of the morning? How are you cut down to the ground that you laid low the nations? And you said in your heart, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God, and I will sit upon the mount of congregation in the uttermost parts of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will make myself like the Most High. Yet you shall be brought down to Sheol, to the uttermost parts of the pit. They that see you shall gaze upon you, and they shall consider you, saying, is this the man that made the earth to tremble, that did shake the kingdoms, that made the world as a wilderness, and overthrew the cities within, and that let loose his prisoners to their home? Or that didn't let loose his prisoners to their home. All the kings of the nations, all of them, sleep in glory, every one in his own house. But you are cast away from your sepulchre like an abominable branch, clothed with the slain, that are thrust through with the sword, that go down to the stones of the pit as a dead body trodden underfoot. Thou shalt not be joined with them in burial, because you have destroyed their land. The host... You have slain thy people. The seed of evildoers shall not be named forever. Sorry, that was getting a little bit of a struggle towards the end for translating on the fly.
A little bit rough, but you did it.
It's all right. I made it. Crash landing, still a landing. Any landing you can walk away from is a good landing. But no, I want to tie this into what we read in Revelations here, where it equates Satan to a star, specifically a day star, son of the morning, and then it talks about exalting his throne above the stars of God. There's a lot of references to stars here and talking about angelic beings, and you can kind of see these faint indications, but it doesn't blatantly say this as much as maybe a lot of Christians expect.
Do you think that's a cross reference to the 2 Corinthians where it says about angel of light? Do you think that's a cross reference?
I think so, because there's a lot of belief in Christian circles that Satan was like, I think what is called like the light bearer, the worship leader, if you will, but that he was a very, very luminescent being, and that's kind of indicated in the name Lucifer, which I think might actually be used here, and that might be the translation of O Day Star. I'll have to look that up on the break as well.
Yeah.
That and diadems.
Diadems.
We're about to come up on another break here, so I'll take a look at that and get answers. But I think that's Lucifer, and the name Lucifer is indicative of a bright being, just by the name, like luminescence. Lucifer. It's
like the lumens of a light
right,
bulb.
exactly.
So, yeah.
So, that being said, unless you have any interjections, I think we're take another break here.
I do not.
No thoughts, comments, concessions, confessions, Snyder marks.
Confessions? How long we got?
Oh, boy.
No, just kidding.
All right. Well, we are going to take a break. As we gather our thoughts, please don't fall to the earth with the luminescent one.
Don't go to hell.
Jeez. We hope you've maintained your place amongst the stars here on Musings on Mysteries and the Mythical Matrix. So, took a break, recollected our thoughts. Thank you for stumbling through this episode with us thus far. I think it's going to get a little more interesting from here on out.
I mean, you're doing most of the stumbling because you're like the one mostly talking. I'm going to be stumbling now.
Yeah, that's fine. Well, you looked up diadem, so how about we
Yes.
start with you?
So diadem is basically a tiara of a king. So
A crown.
yeah, pretty much a crown. It's just, to show royalty. Pretty much it.
It's maybe as a metaphor to indicate what countries that he's ruling or something like that as a symbol, a symbol of his authority over certain countries at that point.
Yeah, probably.
So that's a way to look at it. A couple other things I wanted to touch on was it's interesting it talks about in that passage from Isaiah 14 that we read that it talks about I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will sit upon the mount of congregation in the uttermost parts of the north. It is indeed the word for north here. And so it's interesting because it makes it hard to tell if it's talking about a geographical location or if it's just using north to kind of reference up. So, I don't know. That was an interesting thought. And then I also wanted to touch on Sheol real quick. So my understanding of this is loose. I'm going to go off of the hip here, so I might be wrong on some of these details. But, we get 80% of our facts wrong 90% of the time on this show. So, not actually, but, we haven't been fact checked. So take that as you will.
How ironic this is going to be. So I also found something about diadem where it's just something bound to the head. So it could be like a crown or a tiara, but it could also be like a headband or something else, like equivalent to that. So I'm already correcting myself.
Dang, there you go.
I don't want to spread false information.
No, me either. I do the best I can to get everything right. I still have a lot of follow-ups from like 10 episodes ago of things I got wrong that I've been meaning to address, but I just haven't done a musings episode because we've had so much content.
Yeah.
And then my episode with Isaiah was like kind of a musings episode, but not quite. Anyway, so Sheol, from my understanding, I think Sheol is referring to more of like a holding place for judgment from like the Old Testament, because the Jews did not have a understanding of hell in the way that Jesus taught it in the New Testament. That was kind of a newer revelation. So, what's up?
Nothing. It's fine.
Oh, you're pointing to my finger? Yeah, I might pinch my finger at work.
Oh, I thought it was like a piece of dirt or something. I'm sorry.
Nope, it's fine.
I didn't want you to get it into your eye.
So Isaiah 14:12 talks about the star of the morning. It is sometimes translated as Lucifer. In the King James, it's actually translated as Lucifer. But the specific word here is Hellel, which is just like two L's, and I think that's a the in front of it, the ha sound.
Like the T is silent?
There's no T. It's Hellel.
Oh, I thought you said the.
No, like the H character in Hebrew sometimes means like the.
Okay.
Like literally translated as the. So like a great example is going back to our analysis of Genesis where it was like ha mayim is the waters. Ha is the waters is mayim.
Gotcha.
So I'm actually not quite sure about the HE here. But
Gotcha.
yeah, it's often understood. It's not Lucifer in the original Hebrew, but it is translated as Lucifer in some instances. It's sometimes translated as star as well. And that's Strong's Interlinear Hebrew Concordance from Bible Hub. So let's see what else. I had a couple other follow-ups. I thought it was also interesting that in Isaiah 14, it references like man. It references talking about Satan as a man. Is this the man that made the earth tremble, that did shake the kingdoms? But the word for man here is not the traditional Adam or Ha-Adam that we're used to seeing. It's actually a different word, like it's Hayish, I think. It is used as man or men throughout the Old Testament. Maybe this word kind of means more like being rather than just like specifically like human. Because there's a different word to annotate that specifically from the beginning, when we look at Genesis 1. But that does give us the indication that Satan, the accuser, however you want to define him, that there is a male connotation to the being. So it's worth noting. That's about all the follow-ups I had on that. Did you take away anything interesting from there? I'm going to take a long silence as no.
I thought it was pretty cool about the dragon and like kind of in Revelations, the whole description of that and kind of relating it to the seraphim, like just how intricate their descriptions are with that.
Yeah, and what's interesting is like dragon and serpent are used distinctly, but the way that they're phrased, it kind of makes you think of like a serpentine dragon, like one of those really long snaky dragons, if you will.
Right. That you see in Avatar.
Yeah, like that kind of thing. It might actually be Satan.
Oh no.
I mean, they are associated with fire.
That's true.
Anyway, so I'm gonna hit a couple more verses here, one more passage, and then one verse, and then you wanted to talk about something, and we'll hit that, and then we'll be closing up.
Very briefly talk about it, yeah.
Yeah.
Like just mention it.
So I'm going to read from Ezekiel 28:12 through 17. Son of man, take up a lamentation over the king of Tyre and say to him, thus says the Lord Jehovah, you sealed up the sum full of wisdom and perfect in beauty. You were in Eden, the garden of God. Every precious stone was your covering. The sardius, the topaz, the diamond, the beryl, the onyx, and the jasper, the sapphire, the emerald, and the carbuncle and gold. The workmanship of, I don't even know what that word is, tabrets? I don't know. And of your pipes was in you. In the day that you were created, they were prepared. You were anointed cherub that covers and set so that you were upon the holy mountain of God. You have walked up and down in the midst of the stones of fire. You were perfect in your ways from the day you were created till unrighteousness was found within you. By the abundance of your traffic, they filled the midst of you with violence, and you sinned. Therefore have I cast you as profane out of the mountain of God, and I have destroyed thee, O covering cherub, from the midst of the stones of fire. Your heart was lifted up because of your beauty. You have corrupted your wisdom by reason of your brightness. I have cast you to the ground. I have laid kings before you that they may behold you. And so this is where we get a lot of other descriptions of Satan, where he is talked about being clad in all of these beautiful jewels and gold and all these precious metals, and that it was, within him from the day of his creation, and that he was created as being sinless. God didn't create Satan, the accuser, to sin, but that he just had unrighteousness found within him. Basically, pride filled him, and that's why he was cast off of the mountain of God, which that would be a whole interesting study there. Mm-hmm. And then we also see reference to Satan being a cherub, or, whatever you want to infer here. It says that thou wast in Eden, the literal American Standard Version. You were in Eden. So it's very clear this is talking about the serpent, the dragon, Satan, the accuser, all tied into one. So it gives us clear connotation of being a cherub here, which I do think is interesting. And I need to do a study on angels at some point in the Bible.
That'd be fun.
Yeah, we need to do that. I have, tentatively, I'm not going to name drop the guest, but I do tentatively have an episode lined up to talk about, I think, demons in the Bible in the very near future. So this is a good kind of prelude to that, to set the stage. So this is another interesting analysis, if you will, to get more of a glimpse into Satan and what the origins are from the Bible in a broader sense. So, yeah, I don't really know if I have much to add to this one, honestly. I think it's pretty self-explanatory within itself. Last verse I'm going to hit on is Ephesians 2:2, that talks about the prince of the power of the air, the spirit that is now at work in the sons of disobedience, talking about like demonic forces having power within the skies, like within heaven, if you will. So I think that's about all I've got. Babe, what do you got?
Okay. So I was kind of looking up some information about Satan, and they actually have the satanic Bible. That's specifically, I don't know if it's worshiping Satan, but it's kind of like presenting sin as like an inherent, force of nature, almost like, yeah.
Which is interesting because that kind of goes hand in hand with a lot of like what the Bible teaches, is that sinful fallen nature is inherent within man. And so the Satanic Bible kind of basically is teaching that this should be accepted and not rejected.
Yeah.
And it teaches a lot of like self-empowerment and everything, which can be good to a small degree, but the way they go about it, obviously I would take issue with.
Right. It's more about like self-improvement and personal like responsibility, that kind of thing. But it's done in a way that, it's
done in an arrogant way.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's some like similarities with the Holy Bible. And then there's like some differences too. So like the golden rule in the Bible, do unto others as you do unto yourself. And like the Satanic Bible, it's kind of opposite, where it encourages you, like if somebody like does something to you, you do the same back. It's like out of revenge.
Right.
So it teaches blatant revenge instead of the Holy Bible. So
right. Yeah, and then I mean the other key thing to note is we will probably never study this on the podcast, not because I'm scared of differing opinions, but because it was written in 1967, I think. I want to say
the Satanic Bible?
Yeah, something
69.
Yeah, something within there.
I think 69, yeah.
So it was written very recently, so it's not going to be a credible document of mythology in any way, shape, or form. It was just some thoughts put together by some people, kind of a collection of practices and then logical reasoning and stuff as well.
I think it was just written to try to say God was not real, because I think they use God and Satan interchangeably in the Satanic Bible, but I could be wrong on that.
Yeah, so I mean, it's an interesting thing to note that it exists, but it by no means would have any kind of credibility or historical authenticity to it. There's no accounts or claims that I'm aware of present within it. So it's just important to note that, I think that's a good way to kind of close out the conversation here on Satan, unless you had something else.
I only had one more comment that like modern Satanism like doesn't really seem like it's actually Satan worship. It's just more like anti-Christian.
Yeah, I can see that too. So it's
more out of like mockery and like refusing, God. And
taking the principles in the Bible and twisting them instead of, seeking God. It's more seeking self to a unhealthy fulfillment of base desires. So.
Yeah, like it's more encouraging, your own pleasure in life and, disregard for other people. It's just about you. So
yeah,
that's what I took from it.
Very arrogant approach, which is ironic because pride is often attributed as the main cause as to why Satan was cast out of heaven. So
it fits.
Yeah, it does fit. Well, I'll apologize to our listeners. This one was definitely I'm not on my A game on this one.
I think you did good.
Well, thanks, babe. But it's not my best episode I've had. We've had a lot better. There should be other good content coming in the near future. I got some great episodes queued up. I've been corresponding with a number of different guests. We're going to try to get Harrison back on to finish his series in the near future.
I'm excited to come on again for
you're going to come on. We've
topics.
debuted you as a guest talking about psychology. You'll be seeing more of Isaiah. I have another guest that you've seen before, tentatively going to talk about demonology a little bit on the show. I have another great guest that's actually written a book. I'm not going to name drop that guest either, but I have a lot of great guests coming up in the near future, and I'm working on expanding the show's network to get more interesting people on to be able to talk to these topics with in greater depth. But yeah, this one was just kind of some more footnotes that I had that I decided was enough for an episode, but I should have reviewed more. So I'm sorry if this one was a little rough. We will make it better in the future.
Thanks for listening.
All right. Well, you can get a hold of us at m.quad.musings@gmail.com. Tell me how terrible this episode was. No, not really. I mean, yeah.
It was not terrible.
It wasn't terrible. It wasn't the best, but it wasn't the worst
You're
either.
really beating yourself up over this.
Yeah, I know.
You're good. You're good. You did a good job.
Normally, I'm so much more prepared, and I wrote all these notes and I reviewed them, and then I was just like, yeah, I'm stumbling through. Anyway, you can get a hold of us at m.quad.musings@gmail.com. Send us your thoughts, confessions, concessions, contentions, snide remarks, quantumly transcend time. If you have thoughts that you want to add about Satan,
send us your confirmation bias.
Oh, I will read it anonymously on the show and mock you. And same thing if you send us your logical fallacies.
Or send me psychology facts. I love to hear about psychology. That'd be great.
Yeah. I would also love to hear about psychology.
Yeah. Do it.
You can find us on Instagram and TikTok at m.quad.musings, assuming TikTok hasn't been banned at this point, because I know that's been in the air for a couple months now. But I don't know. We'll see what happens. And then you can find us on Facebook at Musings on Mysteries and The Mythical Matrix. Oh, and I also forgot, this was an addition. I did also create a special page. Madison, say something soft for me for a second.
Hi. I don't know what he's pulling up, but we're just going to go with it.
So I created a buy me a cup of coffee for the podcast. So this is like where you can go and you can show some support. If you find value from the podcast, you can give us a donation of your choice. So I'm just going to put this out there. It does take a lot of work, a lot of equipment, a lot of time to keep the shows going. And so, I'm not wanting anyone to feel pressured, because that's just not the premise of this show. We're not going to pressure you to believe stuff. We're not going to pressure you to give money, but it definitely helps us recoup costs, because I had to spend a lot to get the sound equipment. I have to maintain the subscriptions for editing the audio. It just helps us kind of keep the lights on. So if you're interested to help fuel, if we, break even, and actually gets, a little bit of money back from our investment, it could also fund like future expeditions to more exciting places than Ark Encounter, Serpent Mound, or Mothman Festival. So just going to put that out there. You can find the specific buy me a coffee. It's m.quad.musings, but you can find the specific link in the show notes. So if you feel so inclined to, show us a little bit of support that way, it is greatly appreciated.
I thought you were talking about real coffee. I got super excited.
No, I actually have it formatted as a instead of a coffee, it's buy me a book.
Buy me a book.
Yeah, because I
like books too.
Yeah, I buy so many books for researching stuff on the podcast, and I have piles and piles. There's books scattered all over.
Yeah, we have a ton of books
here. So
we have a ton of books. Hey, also send any topic ideas. That would be kind of cool too.
Yeah, I mean,
any requests?
Yeah, go for it. That would be a good way to get my attention too. If you want to see a specific topic on the show, and you send a donation of $5 and be like, "Hey, talk about this.
Talk about Bigfoot."
It's like, okay, you've got my attention with $5. like, man, it's more than the podcast has made in a whole 6 months of doing it.
You get $5. I'm rich.
Yeah, man. No. I enjoy podcasting. It's fun for me, but it's very investment heavy. It takes a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of money, maintaining the social media and everything. So yeah, you don't have to. Of course, I don't want anyone to feel pressured. But it does. If you get a lot of value out of the show, I know some people like to try to give value back when they get value. This is a good way to give value, and this would be a good way for us to gauge interest as well, to see if people want to support the show. So if you start supporting the show, this might be a gateway to Patreon coming up in the future, which would be exclusive content for members. So that means additional content, because again, if you're helping fund that, then we have the ability to keep the lights on a little bit more, do a little bit more research, a little bit more prep. Maybe a budget for some higher end guests in the future. Who knows? Maybe a debate with Billy Carson. I really want to debate Billy Carson. Well,
I would love for you two to be like locked into a room and having to argue about like just the Bible in general. I would love it.
So
I would pay like thousands to see that.
One of my heroes on social media, Wesley Huff, he's a apologeticist from Canada. He actually debated Billy Carson. And then Billy Carson requested the interview not be aired.
Sounds about right.
Yeah. So I apparently there's exclusive apparently there's a way you can get exclusive content of it and to view it and to actually listen to it. So I need to do that. But,
yeah, we do.
Yeah, because
that'd be awesome.
I'm just again, I don't have problems with anyone's fringe ideas. I welcome fringe ideas. We got to ask the questions, but don't change the facts to fit your fringe ideas.
Conspiracy theories exist.
Confirmation bias.
But conspiracy theories exist for a reason. So, obviously we're going to consider it and, look into it. But I've heard some wild ones, but...
Yeah. Speaking of conspiracy theories, we need to get Phil DeMattis back on the show, too, talking about UFOs, because he was... he appealed to our conspiracy theorist audience, I think, a bit more.
Yeah,
Yeah, anyway, that was a little bit more of housekeeping stuff there for the show. I completely forgot about the Buy Me a Coffee, and that derailed me because I put that in the last episode in the show notes. But this is my first time actually addressing it on air. So I just kind of wanted to explain that for our listeners to kind of be aware as to what that is and to be able to support us. I mean, after this episode, they might not feel like they want to support us, but hopefully after the next couple episodes being a lot better.
I think it was okay.
Yeah, I was stumbling. I'm just burnt out. A lot of work, a lot of stuff that needs done. Our weekend wasn't really a weekend,
no,
and then right into the next week here, and then it's going to be a really long week for me. So.
And a long weekend.
Yeah, it is what it is. But
keep on the grind.
Yeah. No rest for the weary, but...
You didn't get my pun. Buy me coffee.
Oh, nice. Well played.
You're rubbing off on me way too much.
Yeah, I do a lot of puns, especially not on air. But yeah, I'll stop rambling here. We'll close out the show. Thank you for tuning in on this fine evening. And whether you've been listening on the earth, above the earth, or below the earth, we invite you to quantumly transcend time and interact with us. We hope you have a good rest of your night.